I appreciate you bearing with me for the next 59 minutes, because I think we're already into our one hour. Thank you for having me. This is great. I've taught here for 3 years, early fall, early spring, late spring, and one summer. And I had never worked with a more collaborative group of people, and the students and the faculty and the staff. And then I had to take a sabbatical and took a new position as a CMO with a company out in Colorado. And one of the things that we agreed to was, there's a lot of things that sometimes can keep you from having all the focus you need in a new role. And this would be one of those roles my wife would call, that's like a big boy job, right? I remember when I got this job, EVP of marketing for a publishing house. And she said, wow, that's a big boy job. I'm like, well, I've been working for 30 years almost, but, and I thought about it, it was kind of a big job. So this is kind of the same situation here. So I'm not teaching, and I haven't spoken since 2012. So when they called me up and said, would you come and just do a session? I'm like, yeah, I'm so excited. I haven't done any public speaking in a long time. But more importantly, I haven't hung out with all you folks. And I just think the staff and administration and all the other faculty member and all the students, graduates, and folks considering the program, it's just such a dynamic couple days. And just running into people that said, we talked and I wasn't really sure if I wanted to be part of the program, and now I'm halfway through. And you're like, oh yeah. Or I heard, I didn't really understand that creative strategy part, the input brief, and it didn't have as much relevance when we were talking about it during the class, but I changed my position now, and I've got this incredible relationship with the creative director, because guess what? I come in and my strategic briefs, my creative input is just tight, and the other folks aren't really experiencing that. So that little kind of discipline, that basic fundamental that goes into creating, award-winning breakthrough creative that moves the needle, was learned there. And you're like, oh yeah, that's great. Because a lot of times you don't get that kind of feedback. The feedback we get, we check our grades and all that stuff, how many hours before we graduate and all that other stuff. But it's just great to be back after not being here last year and get that kind of feedback. So thank you for the warm reception. Thank you for the warm room. I live in Colorado, moved from Michigan, so anytime the weather gets above, I don't know, sorry about that, above 40 degrees, we're happy people. That's a good start. There we go, trigger finger. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about today was being a creative strategist or a strategic creative, and it's not really a choice. And so the question is really, I just threw it out there, you're both already, but which are you becoming? Or maybe which are you becoming more? And this is a term I've used probably for the last 30 years. I'm in the creative discipline, but I have to really think strategically about what I'm doing. Or I'm a strategist, I work a lot with numbers and qualitative data and quantitative data, but I have to think really creatively about how I use those data, that information. How do I think differently and not out of the box, but really do something that's actionable? And more, the convergence that's happening with media, the convergence that's happening in the different industries, means that there's really a convergence of our individual disciplines. And what's nice is it increases the value that you contribute to an organization, also known as job security. But it also says, if I don't have that, maybe this isn't the right fit for me, because I've got this creative side that I want to release and I want to use, and I think I have an ability to do that. Or strategically, I have some good insights, or I have some another way to look at things, and I don't know if I've got a place at the table to share it. So hopefully through this hour, I'm going to overpromise and hopefully deliver, on that promise. So the agenda, this is as close as what's known as a typewriter. I know we don't remember these, but I remember when we got our first IBM Select with a little ball that you interchanged. But this, I just chose this as kind of an homage to the way we used to do things. So, today, how do we create this award-winning breakthrough creative in advertising and marketing, whether it's digital, online, whatever the platform, whatever the medium, whoever the audience? And then how do we move the needle? So that's kind of the science part of it, right? The left brain. How do we move that needle and not just the hearts and minds, because that's the emotional side, right? We want to really reach people and tap into their emotions and so forth. They don't want to manipulate them. They want to feel really a part of that with your experience. So how do we get the left side and the right side working together? And then finally, how do we really unleash that strategist in you, that creative that's in you? And more importantly, as you're working on teams, how do we help to release that in the people that we work with, the teams that we're on and so forth? Can we understand it and so forth? So that's a lot to do in 50 something minutes, but I think we can at least take a stab on it, because what we're going to do is stand on the shoulders of people that have gone before us, and I always love that, to look at what other people have done and say, what are those best practices? I'll try to make it as participative as possible, but nobody's on the spot. I actually did the homework, so you're not doing my work for me. But if you have any questions, I'm going to leave some time at the end for us to go through that as well. So let's talk about creating, right? Isn't that nice? I love Keynote. I don't know. I just if I go too far on this, it's available in a PDF in a very flat file, and I put all the URLs for anything that's in here video-wise or links, and that's on SlideShare. And just look under XLER SlideShare. That's my marketing and brand consultancy that I started years ago. It's just Oechsler Marketing and Brand Consultancy. Just look under SlideShare. I also have the last presentation that I gave in 2012, and that's on disruptive innovation in media-based industries. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? But we heard that word disruption and innovation quite a bit, over the last couple days. And I have worked in advertising about 25 years, worked in publishing, and then also worked in film. So that presentation looks at those three industries. Currently, as CMO, I'm working in retail, which is funny because I started in retail a long time ago, and I spent about 8 years in retail. It's kind of fun to be back in retail. Furniture retail, very, very competitive. You're measured on the hours sometimes, in that very dynamic industry. Let's talk about creating a little bit. I thought we'd go with some classic and then more contemporary examples. And so I choose, which is the one on the left? Yeah, your left, right? Absolut, right? Apple. But, judged over a period of time, and let me know if I'm in your way too, okay? Judged as over the period of time, because I can barely read that, to be the highest quality and outstanding of its kind. So that's what kind of makes it a classic. A lot of times we call things classic, and some of the times, the consumer's going to say, yeah, that's not really a, Coke Classic wasn't exactly, it's a classic mistake, but, it didn't deliver a lot of value. So let's kind of look at these. And what I wanted to do in this presentation was give enough creativity as well as enough strategy or ideas or information or data. It's just a balance, not a lot of both, not a lot of either. But also to show web, also to show design, all right, also to show television, just so you get a breadth of the different ways that people communicate. So Absolut Vodka. Now this, we talk a lot about what's your story. In the last presentation I talked about storytelling. And I just love the backstory here. This wouldn't be the brand story. This wouldn't be the inherent drama. This wouldn't be the ethos of Absolut. But it's almost like a meta story. It's a story of how the advertising campaign. So for people in marketing, communication, advertising, boy, we love this stuff, don't we? We love to kind of see how the sausage is made. So one November evening in 1990, Jeff was doodling. That's done with paper and pencil. Huge Absolut bottles on a pad, not an iPad, as he watched The Honeymooners, which is a TV show with Jackie Gleason, our Carney, that you can look up and probably watch at Nick at Night. Atop one bottle, he drew a halo, much like an angel's. I don't know how many other halos we have out there, much like an angel's. Then he jotted down a headline, Absolut. It's the perfect vodka. Hayes liked it, especially the little joke. He knew the halo would reduce some of the pompousness of the headline. Then he did what a good creative does. He gave it the 24-hour sniff test. Actually, he didn't. 24 hours went by, and his partner gave it the sniff test. Who was that partner? His writing partner. The following morning, Hayes showed the sketch to his partner, Graham, and he liked it. But he looked at the long headline, look at all those words, and asked, why not just say absolute perfection? Together they turned out A few more ads, and soon a format emerged. In just 2 words, the first one always being absolute, the ad would say something complimentary or flattering about either the product itself or the person drinking it. And importantly, add a dollop, great word if you ever work on like craft or something like that, or just a dollop. I like it. Just a dollop, where I lose myself, a dollop of humor, so the we're the best claim wouldn't be quite so boring or pretentious. So that's like, wow, we just got invited in to this concepting session, watching the honeymooners. I write this down, I've got this idea. Of course, I bring it to my writing partner, because I'm an art director, and he makes it maybe a little tighter, a little bit better. Now, the nice thing about Absolut, and we know this, it's got legs. That was 1990, and I'm not a real big math guy, but that was a long time ago, right? Honeymooners, doodling. I mean, this is a century ago. But you've seen the way it all of a sudden got legs. And why did it get legs? Well, first of all, it took a while for it actually to catch on. It wasn't a hit overnight for Absolut. And somebody was patient enough to say, let's not go to a new campaign. They were patient enough to let it build and let it work. And that would probably be from the client standpoint going, I don't know if it's moving the needle enough. Maybe we should do something else. But they let it build. They let it grow. And they were in print. It's not that they had this, they didn't all go to IMC at WVU and put a whole integrated campaign. Nothing went up on it. It was print. So it was a very, very targeted medium, but a very, very straightforward message. But then the team realized it didn't have legs. How many ways can we say we're the best? We found a way to execute it. We've got a simple execution, but really, is this going to last till, I don't know, 2014? Probably not. So what they did was they found a way to localize it and globalize it. And they found a way, when they did the Andy Warhol Absolut bottle, they found a way to bring art and sophistication into it. They made some very interesting choices on their photography. Building little models of swimming pools and hotels and things like that. Shooting it with a plexiglass, did I pronounce that right? Plexiglass. Plexiglass back instead of a typical black background, kind of a matte. So they lit it differently. But they kept the simplicity of the ads and found ways to look, I can do different times of the year, I can do different places, and what I could do is personalize it. And people now have almost a personal affinity to it, or a social or cultural affinity to it, and it kept legs going, but they kept the elements very, very, very comparable to what they started with. I must want to turn the volume up. I keep doing that. People will just say, I'm going to just take that out of your hands. So what did we learn from that? Well, this is a collection. You can also get this on disc, but this is the Absolut book. So this is the full campaign. How many have they done so far? There are over 2,000 executions. 2,000. Boy, you get a good idea and it's working, you got to stick with it. I remember I was at Leo Burnett in Chicago, and we had lost the United account. We had the United account for 35 years. Rhapsody in Blue, Friendly Skies, bum, 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 bum. Well, if you've gone through Chicago, they still play it in the tunnel. You could always be friendly, right? You could always be friendly. And they would do things that would go out of their way to do that, especially to the business traveler, where the inherent drama of United was to that business, flyer who's away from home and staying in a hotel room, to be extra specially friendly to that person. I just remember being on the plane one time, and it was a little thing. Hi, this is Bob, your captain. I just want to say that we've got Mary. She's back in 34B, and this is her first flight. A little nervous. Mary's 83. Well, we've got a first-class seat for you, Mary. Come on up. It wasn't kind of Southwest, which has that kind of it's a totally different experience. But that idea of being friendly, and all of a sudden they let that go, and they went to an agency that said, we're going to be rising, right? I fly a lot. Rising's good. I like that. But they also were hanging their hat kind of on customer solutions. Customer satisfaction, right? And there's so much that you can't control. How many, the weather. How many planes are going through a particular gate. So they walked away from that. And then somebody said something today that they had actually gone back to friendly. And I thought that was very, very interesting. 35 years, they had this incredible brand story. They were able to execute perfectly in a very strong relational way. But with the change of leadership, they kind of changed a lot of things. So that ability to kind of stick with something that's working, that is the essence of the brand, and find ways to keep it fresh and engaging, and then even niche it and personalize it was pretty huge. So what do we know about this? And I'm not going to talk a lot about which awards got won or how it broke through, but if you just looked at how spirits were advertised up to this point, very different. And white liquors especially weren't advertised as much. Dark liquors were much more popular. But it's a very simple idea, and it's executed very, very well. And the other thing is it's got a fresh take on a superiority claim, right? There's only so many ways that you can say we're the best. There's no one better. Just kidding. I have to get my glamour shot for the next cover. Something. Is it? I'm just kidding. Sorry, Alex. Can we edit that in post? Do you mind? So they found a new way to say we're the best. They didn't tear anybody else down. Well, one of the things, too, they tapped into the name. Absolut. That is incredible to come up with that, right? Absolut. And they leveraged that in a very, very simple way. And you think how old that brand was, had it ever been done before, had it ever been done like that? And then, they found the legs that they needed. Does the campaign, does this idea have legs? And will the consumer, once we change something up, will they stick with us? And they made the bottle the hero, which is usually the product's the hero. But they made the packaging the hero, right? They really did. They said, this is unique. And you see that with Coca-Cola, right? The classic shape. Because it became iconic. The branding is iconic. People easily recognize it as soon as they see it. It stands alone, and it stands for something. And what it also does is it stands that it's nothing else but that. And then it spans cultures. They found a way to bring it across cultures, which is so important. And how they do that, they brought it in, they regionalized it, they globalized it, and so forth. And they didn't go maybe to what would have been easier, which would have been the origin of the product. And they let others tell that story. They wanted to tell their story. And when they were sitting there versioning the bottles, they were saying, we are trying to target a very sophisticated consumer who's going to spend more for this premium product. So we won't, in our copy, say that. But in what we choose for the bottle, we will be speaking to them. Because the things, like the first time they deviated and had a ski slope, that speaks to a certain person who goes skiing at resorts like Vail. And it was just a way to do that, the same with Hollywood and so forth. And then it stayed print-centric, which is really kind of unusual. I have a person I work with he said, pray for print. He's always worked in print. He's just like, pray for print, that print would just stay, relevant. And they've kept it relevant. And as we see magazines going away, as we see newspapers going away, the advertising remained print-centric because that was the best medium really to deliver that message. Sometimes, depending on what you're trying to do, sight, sound, and motion is great. Some type of direct response, there's another medium. But for this, it really elevated it and gave it almost a fashion look. I'm not obsessing over this, I just had a lot of bullet points. So they were absolutely perfect. And they have been for, it's like over 30 years, isn't it? Was that me? Did I do that? I'm sorry. All right. And then let's talk about Apple. And I always have to do Apple. I usually do Starbucks too. I just love these two brands. So, it's funny that when I moved to Colorado, I was just telling the story. When I moved to Colorado, I don't drink Starbucks like I used to for some reason. I think it's the altitude. But if I get a Starbucks or two a week, where I was usually just, it's kind of like concert tickets. It's going to open in an hour. I got the sleeping bag out. But I don't do that anymore. But I was one of the first to get the little black card in the mail, which was it was a black card, but they called it a gold card, right? And they sent it to me. They didn't charge me for it. And each Starbucks only gives out 3. So every store got 3 to give out to their best customers. And I was, wow, addictions have their privileges. I walked in and I was like, I've got my gold card. And all the baristas are, wow, we haven't heard, we read the memo. It was, the little angels were, and then they didn't know what to do with it. It was like, I don't know, it's a gold card. So anyway, but I'm kind of nice. It's good to be drinking water again. It's a lovely beverage. I recommend it. But let's look at Apple, because I love Apple. I've been in the tribe for many years, and I took this quote from Steve Jobs: "Design is a funny word. Some people think design means how it looks, but of course, if you dig deeper, it's really how it works." And you think about that. I mean, that is the essence of the difference between how it works. The way it worked for me was I was in journalism school at the University of Texas. Woo! All right, there we go. New best friend, sorry. And I won a scholarship from Reader's Digest for excellence in journalism. And I thought that was awesome. It was like $3,000. And I didn't apply for it. It was submitted or something. And of course, I was thinking, I only read Reader's Digest at my mom's house, and it's always in the bathroom. And I usually just read the jokes, right? But I thought, $3,000. I ran down to the computation center at the University of Texas. Woo! Right there you go. And I bought a HD 30, which had a 30 megabyte hard drive. I don't know if you can even wrap your head around that. I got a 4800 baud modem, and this was portable. It came in a big canvas bag. It's like that. I bought the bag, I bought the image writer, I bought that HD 30. And I didn't know code, I didn't know any way to do whatever you did on a PC, but I took that home and I opened the box, and there was a little card, and it said, take it out of the box, number 1, I can do that. Plug it in, number 2, I can do that. Go. Start. Turn it on, start. And that was it. I said, that's awesome. And it was so intuitive. The little guy came up and he smiled, and I just walked around that campus with that bag, and I could do work anywhere I wanted to do, and it just freed me up. I didn't have to learn anything, and I still appreciate that when there's not any manual that comes with the products, right? I mean, this is really, I don't have to. When I got my first BlackBerry, it had a book like that. I was on an airplane trying to read it. I was in hives because it wasn't intuitive, it wasn't easy. So that the idea of how it works is part of the overall design. And I think that Apple's just done an excellent job. And that's why they've become classic. I keep doing that. Would somebody stop me? Stop me, Ken. So I have a few examples from Apple's. I did again. I'm going to just turn it sideways, I think. That's the best way to do it. Oh. And now I'm trying to turn it down. I'm not able to. There we go. Let's try it again.
Hello, I'm a Mac. And I'm a PC.
And I'm a Mac genius. And I'm here to announce that it's easier than ever to switch to a Mac.
Easier? What's she talking? Oh, CPC.
Oh, great. That was my big reveal, and I blew it. Let me try it again. See me, my volume control. You're going to fix that in post, right? Don't get this on film, Alex. Please.
App Store.
And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
Yeah. See, when it works, it works. When it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But, you know, I put that up there because we really had this cacophony, right, of messaging from Apple, but it's really, really consistent with what it's always been. And I love it. They just, you know, they just had the anniversary for the Think Different campaign. And I remember that because they got their start actually in education, not in business. IBM kind of owned business, so they went into, of course, education. And what did they do? They said, think different instead of think differently. You know, educators were not really happy about that, but they were thinking different. And, you know, you think about how the architecture looks on the, you know, on the Macs, on the Apple Store in New York. And it did, you know, it's just an amazing site. Just recently won, you know, awards for their iPad campaign. You know, here's Time, the New Yorker and Time and everything else, but just really drawing out in a very simple way the difference between an iPad and, you know, some type of a print platform. And then, of course, the packaging. I mean, how many haven't got their new iPhone or iPad or whatever, and just that idea of the packaging, right? I mean, of all the packaging of anything that we buy, we still have all the packaging. I don't know why. I'm not going to put it on Craigslist. I need to put it back in the box. But for some reason, you just feel like, I don't really want to throw that out. I mean, look at that. That's awesome. You know, and you know, but that idea of, you know, the music, being able to really be a game changer within a category, redefining the category. When Apple came out and they had the iPhone, it wasn't like, oh, you can get email and you can make phone calls. No, I mean, they talked about the apps. They showed the apps because that was that thing that said innovation. Nobody's got that. And they continue to do that. I mean, they reinvented how people use the phone. They reinvented how people use the camera, how people buy music, right? I mean, it just completely was a game changer, and that's just part of what their, you know, their essence has been. So, you know, they're just kind of absolute genius, right? Less is better. One of the things, if you think of a theme that's going to override everything we look at, simplicity, and we talked about that in other sessions, simplicity, especially when we're kind of overwhelmed and being bombarded with choices. Less is better for Apple. Insanely simple, right? I love people of, I would say, my generation, but in my heart, I'm still about 25. And if you ask my wife at 30 years, she'd say, well, you're about 19, actually. And, you know, but kids that are 2 and 3 and 4 years older are teaching their parents and grandparents actually how to use some of the technology. I think all of our kids in elementary school all the way through are using, you know, the technology in the school. It's really changed the way we do things. One, because it's insanely simple. And that idea of intuitive technology, beautiful design. You know, if you had to create a mantra for Apple, design would be right in there. Cool would be another factor, that cool factor. And then the undying loyalty. I've actually started to look at technology as neo-consumables because we almost treat them as, okay, the next version comes out, I consume it, I pass this down. It's just a different mindset because before you just kind of keep something. I remember getting my first cell phone, it was a brick. I was just glad it wasn't a bag attached to a car, you know, because it was an upgrade for me. But I remember that thing, and it was, you know, that long and had a big antenna. And I remember walking around Chicago going, this is really cool. But I needed a hard hat and some architectural papers because it was so weird. And you know, now it's just such a part of our lives. It's so ubiquitous. And then this idea of innovation and then the unboxing. which is really the reveal, right? The unboxing of the product. Again, it's not just packaging. You know, it's a consumer touch point and an experience. All right, hey, I did it. I didn't turn the volume up or down. Are you proud of me? I can learn. But I did blow right past it. So let's look at, my Lord. You know, it's either good to be the first presenter or the last presenter, right? It's primacy or recency. And I don't like to be in the middle. You know, because you remember what you saw last, or maybe you set the bar for those who go first. If you ever do a pitch or something, you're pitching a piece of business, try to go first or last. You know, set the bar for everybody else, or go last and be the last thing that people remember. I don't know, I'm going to have to rethink this. Maybe in the middle would be good. But this idea of being current, and I picked these two very angry-looking men to demonstrate being current, being contemporary. And do we know this? Yeah, we should, right?
I've had my ups and downs, my fair share of bumpy roads and heavy winds. That's what made me what I am today. Now I stand here before you. What you see is a body crafted to perfection, a pair of legs engineered to defy the laws of physics, and a mindset to master the most epic of splits.
Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows, only time? And who can say if your love grows as your heart shows, only time?
Now, don't try this after this, okay? I'm just telling you. Or let me know, because I'll bring my camera. So, that's good to know. Yeah, that's really good. Really, because amateurs not. Yeah, well, you don't want to do that. I mean, oh yeah, I guess amateurs do want to do it, right? Yeah, they sure do. I mean, there's Vladimir Putin, right? He's over there. He's doing this. This is up from Magic Mike after we finish that. What's that guy's name? Yeah. But you can say a little louder. Don't...
Chuck Norris.
No, not Chuck. The guy next to him from Magic Mike. And come on.
Channing Tatum.
Yeah, there we go. Sure. Yeah, but Chuck did a great job. He did it on airplane wings, and then he had all these people on his shoulders, and basically then they lit it up for Christmas. Right? I mean, Chuck just got right after it. We've got a Kardashian in there, and of course Godzilla had to appear. Which I love, because parody, it's the most parodied spot. You know, you think about it, somebody was so engaged with it and they make the parody out of it. Remember, we're just looking at winning awards and breaking through the clutter. That's all we're looking at right now. You can ask the question, how many people ran out and bought that truck? Right? What was the brand? What does Volvo stand for? What's kind of the inherent drama? Safety. Well, they didn't really talk about safety, did they? No, but precision. And usually you think of precision as what? BMW? A little bit more of a precision brand as opposed to a prestige like a Mercedes. So, but a very strong concept, right? High engagement. I mean, you're looking at going, all right, really? Launched, online, extreme product demo. I worked on P&G brands for quite a while, and it was always problem, product demonstration, solution. That's a huge, epic product demonstration. How that works in P&G, if you got blood on your t-shirt, right, and then you use this detergent, and then all of a sudden all these little activating things go in and the blood breaks down, right, in the washing machine, right, and then all of a sudden you take it out, it's all white, clean, brighter than when you put it in. Of course, you have blood all over your t-shirt, you got a bigger problem than what kind of detergent you're using. I'm just saying, but yeah, I worked on Pepto, I worked on White Cloud toilet paper, I worked on Love's diapers. Okay, there's a theme going on there. You got to work your way up at an agency. I also worked on Crest Complete, which was the first ripple bristle brush that got 37% further between gums and was end rounded, to protect your gums. So you always have to know your product claims. So what they did was they just pushed it all the way as far as they could from a product demo standpoint. Beautifully shot, get this, on the first take. One take. I don't blame you. It's like, I don't want to go practice that all day long. I think if I was driving the truck, I would not want to practice that, because you do not want to make him angry. And, and then it just became pervasive. It just really grew. It just really, really grew. Sorry, I have to get in for a close-up here. But the most parodied spot, and then it was really an honest homage to Van Damme. He makes fun of himself, but it really is within his own brand. So as a spokesperson, he's very, very credible and believable. But he also gives a part of his personality that you maybe haven't seen or you don't really equate to him, and it brings him back in light. And then do you know who the music, who? Right, I always say Enya because I speak a little Spanish. So I always ask other people to pronounce it. It's kind of like Abercrombie. I can't really pronounce it very well. Yeah, and so they brought that kind of very, what we used to call New Age, almost spiritual, ethereal type of music. It was just a perfect music because now you can do that. Beautifully shot, one take. There were cables, I heard. And there were also little grooves on the mirrors where he put his feet in. But it was just incredible. But again, an epic, epic spot. Does it break through? Absolutely. The fact that everybody parodies it, absolutely. Very shareable and so forth. Second spot, completely different feel. Have you seen this one? Yeah.
I'm a forensic artist. Worked for the San Jose Police Department from 1995 to 2011.
I showed up to a place I'd never been, and there was a guy with a drafting board.
We couldn't see them, they couldn't see us.
Tell me about your hair.
I didn't know what he was doing, but then I could tell after several questions that he was drawing me.
Tell me about your chin.
It kind of protrudes a little bit, especially when I smile.
Your jaw.
My mom told me I had a big jaw.
What would be your most prominent feature?
Kind of have a fat, rounder face.
The older I've gotten, the more freckles I've gotten.
I would say I have a pretty big forehead.
Once I get a sketch, I say thank you very much, and then they leave. I don't see them.
All I had been told before the sketch was to get friendly with this other woman, Chloe.
Today I'm gonna ask you some questions about a person you met earlier, and I'm gonna ask you some general questions about their face.
She was thin, so you could see her cheekbones. And her chin, it was a nice, thin chin.
She had nice eyes. They lit up when she spoke.
Cute nose.
She had blue eyes, very nice blue eyes.
So here we go. This is the sketch that you helped me create, and that's a sketch that somebody described of you.
So yeah, that's...
She looks closed off and fatter, sadder too. The second one looks more open, friendly, and happy.
I should be more grateful of my natural beauty. It impacts the choices and the friends that we make, the jobs we apply for, how we treat our children. It impacts everything. It couldn't be more critical to your happiness.
Do you think you're more beautiful than you say?
Yeah. Yeah.
We spend a lot of time as women analyzing and trying to fix the things that aren't quite right. And we should spend more time appreciating the things that we do like.
Okay, if anybody needs a minute, I'll just pause here. I'm a little verklempt. I have 2 boys and then 3 girls, and the youngest ones we adopted 5 years ago from Nicaragua, because that's what you do on your 25th anniversary is adopt a couple kids. And you know, I was pulling the presentation together, and I called Rosa down, who's 14, and I showed it. You know, I wanted her to see this, and she had already seen it. And my 10-year-old from Nicaragua had already seen it, and my 17-year-old daughter had already seen it. You know, it was pretty powerful. And we talked about it just for a second, but you know, I'm a dad. So I called my boys up in Michigan and we talked about Sherlock, which felt good for me. That's a lot of emotion, you know. And you all, some of you went through that whole adoption process with me. It's tough. I couldn't even order from the window at McDonald's. I was so emotional. I'll take fries with that, sure. But it's important, right? And this is part of the beauty campaign, the Real Beauty campaign, you know, based on some insights that only 4% of women think that they're beautiful. And about 60% think that they're their worst critics. And I don't even want to go into the billions of views of this. And it broke on YouTube in 25 languages. And, dimensionalized in print and so forth. 10-year-old campaign, right? And all of a sudden it got a rebirth and to a whole nother level because they tapped into that insight. Some would say it was manipulative, some say it was staged, all those things. But to many, many people, it's very, very real. And that's hard because we used to live and create communications in what was called contrived reality, right? And I worked on that. I worked on McDonald's, right? We had Hallmark. It was all contrived. And you know stuff. It just looks staged. It doesn't look. But now we're into this kind of naturalistic setting. And we're all more ethnographers than anything else. You know, ethnographic, the last company I was with, ethnographic media. You know, stop trying to put the words and the images. There's nothing more real than the lives. But you do still have to package, and you still have to find a way to bring that story out in ways that reach your audiences in heart and mind. So why was this winning awards? Why did it get the lion at Cannes? What medal do they use for that? It went on a Mac at one time. Wasn't it gold? What's the top one? Titanium? Yeah, that's it. Titanium lion at Cannes for the campaign. But global reach into the billions. I mean, billions when you think of PR and so forth. Mentions and views. Universal themes. Boy, when you can get so simple, it's not dumbing something down or going to the least common denominator. It's the highest common denominator that connects us. And if you don't manipulate it, you can make it real and people can own it as opposed to being sold it. Wow, that's what we used to call the tall ripe berries when you do that. You're up there with the tall ripe berries. And it was true to the brand's DNA. This is Dove, I mean, it's soap. Advertising kind of started selling soap, but it's 99.99% pure as a message. Very, very thoughtful, intentional casting. Casting is so important, whether it's a print ad, whether it's a spokesperson, whether it's a dialogue that you're doing in a commercial. They were very, very thoughtful. That forensic artist, you know, just the right forensic artist that could actually get out of, you know, the subjects what he needed. And then people being able to articulate how they interacted with somebody. You know, the people that said her eyes sparkled. It kind of lit up. They need people that could articulate that. If you've done market research, you know that. You know, you always do a brand articulation, an articulation question. If we bring you in a room, are you going to be able to really add? Are you going to overwhelm the group and we're going to have to say you got to call in the lobby, take your purse? Or are you going to sit there and just wait until you can get your, you know, free Coke and you know, whatever the compensation is for being in there. We call those spuds. They're just a potato that sits there. Well, the casting is so important in really making this believable. Beautifully shot, kind of documentary style, right? If you think about how they found that loft in San Francisco and how it was lit and how they decided to show the sketches, how it was shot, close up, the drawing, the artist at work, the reactions, not going, being intimate, but not getting so close into a very personal moment. That's really, in the editing suite especially, you have a lot of stuff, but I got to take it to a point without going over into that manipulation. And, it was the most watched online ad, and it obviously strikes an emotional chord. Again, don't use me as the barometer, but it does. And the shareability of it. I mean, I shared it with 3 people before I finished that page of my presentation because the message was relevant, and I was worried that that message wouldn't be heard. So you talk about it being real. And if your communication can be real, believability is so important in doing work like that. All right. I'm okay now. I'm going to move on. Oh, I did. I moved on. Hey, how about that? I planned that, not. Let's talk about moving the needle, right? So I thought this would be a nice break after the tough, I'm just saying, I know how to transition. Should I just linger here for a second? Who's this over here? Old Spice guy. What do they call him, though, at Old Spice? The old, yeah. But they call him the Old Spice guy. Right? And who's the other guy? Yeah, I tried to get them both here. But I thought, instead of me showing a picture, we should just get these 2 here. Well, let's talk about how we move the needle, all right? And results. Results matter. We work in the commercial arts, right? There's commerce that has to take place. It's not the fine arts where we're creating something that can be admired, put on. It's the commercial arts. And so it has to move the needle. And having worked on both the corporate side and then the agency side, on the corporate side, I really have that appreciation for moving the needle. But as a strategist, that's what I kind of came up in that. Creative strategy, strategic planning, research, consumer insights. Yeah, we've always been there. And at Burnett, this was really critical, especially when, you're in a tough environment. In fact, we got smarter and more strategic when the economy was bad because we knew when the economy turned around. The fact that we were more strategic, more targeted, used the data information to have some actionable insights, and then spent money like the economy wasn't bad, that when it did turn around, we would gain market share from all the others that went dark and fired people and stopped doing research and things like that. We overinvested when the times were tough. So, I love this copy. I mean, he lives vicariously through himself. I love that. Through mid-June, a period when imported beer sales dropped, who knew, 11%, Dos Equis rose more than 17%, moving the brand into 8th place among imports in a tie with Stella Artois. I just love this category. You get to use words you never used before. When shipments rose 13%. Says that success prompted Heineken executives, so they didn't just go national with this or international with this. What did they do? In 2007, they went to a few stronghold markets of the brand. This is one of those things when you're doing market test, is it a test that actually can perform? Because sometimes people test in weak markets, hoping that this test is going to turn it around. But there's usually a lot of factors on why a market is bad or weak. It may have nothing to do with your marketing or advertising. It could be location, it could be competition, it could be media, a lot of reasons. But they went to stronghold markets, so they felt good enough about the campaign for the brand to take the message national this spring. There's never really been an import brand that's been built so clearly through advertising, said Benj, all right, not Benji. Publisher of Beer Marketer's Insight. And you love this kind of quote because it's not from the company. It's from somebody that really understands the industry. Stop. Just stop. So it says, and the campaign, which snared a titanium lion at Cannes this year, has also made its way into bars, restaurants, and nightclubs. We hear people saying the line in bars all the time. And a major wholesaler of Heineken, Miller Coors, and Crown import beers credits the marketing of this 32% boost to its Dos Equis sales this year. So the idea that it's really helping an industry, it's helping a category of this import sales, it's happening the brand itself, and it's happening the proprietors, which is the business-to-business side of it. So it's become a call brand, you know, where it used to be maybe another brand, right? You want to be that gold standard. You want to be that call brand that people come in. I worked, you know, for a while on Marlboro. Everybody can do whatever you want to do. But I worked on Marlboro, which was the #1 brand. It had a larger market share than the second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth brand behind it in a very kind of hostile environment. That ability to then, you know, continue to grow, even when sometimes the market forces are against you, is a real testament to the power of the campaign or the idea. Now let's go to Old Spice guy, okay? So consider for a moment the manly purr of Old Spice spokesman, Isaiah Mustafa. Hello, ladies. Salutation. Did I say that right? Okay. I always want to go into my Lion King voice. Sorry. It seduced the country, social media style, 94 million views on YouTube. Wow, success. 630,000 Facebook fans, an estimated 1 billion aggregate impressions in just 1 week. But wait, it appears consumers may have been too distracted by his glorious swan dives and monocle smiles. I tried the monocle. It is not easy, especially with a convertible, to remember the actual product he was hawking. Sales of the Red Zone body wash have actually declined, according to IRI, 7%. You know, so if you're sitting there and you've spent this kind of money to promote this and get that kind of reaction, you also want to see that needle move. And it said, and the towel-clad and deep voice, whoever wrote this article at Fast Company, towel-clad and deep voice Mustafa may have not even contributed to Old Spice overall sales growth, which Ad Age chalks up to high-value coupon campaign by the company. So whatever growth they had is probably just kind of price item and couponing and promotional at the store level. And both Nivea and Gillette saw similar, if not higher, growth during the same period, which is another way. Are you stealing market share? Right? You're not just looking at what you're doing, you know, year over year, week over week, month over month, units move, but you're looking at what the competition's doing, right? Are you stealing share? And they grew maybe even more, and neither had the help of Mustafa, just coupons. You know, so this is one of those conundrums, because you have this incredibly great campaign. On all the diagnostics, you would say this was very, very successful. But at the end of the day, likes doesn't hit the bottom line. You know, shares doesn't necessarily translate into revenues. Now, there was some argument after the Fast Company about how the data was calculated and so forth. You can follow the whole back and forth, because I'm sure that you know, the brand wanted to put their best light. But IRI typically is scanner data, and it just as things come through the scanner, and it's tracked. But still, it was very interesting that our most interesting man kind of proved himself a little bit stronger beyond his years. All right, so I thought film was another good way to do this. Would be really look at some very high brow cinematography. We'll start with these guys. Great spokespeople.
Andy's going to college on June 18th.
We all knew this day was coming.
Come on, let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
From Disney Pixar.
Welcome to Sunnyside.
In 3D. It's the biggest Toy Story ever.
Yes. You got a play date with Destiny. Who's Velocistar 237?
Oh, that's just a dinosaur toy down the street. That's nothing. Let me just take care of that.
I hate when that happens.
Toy Story 3, rated G, in Disney Digital 3D and IMAX 3D.
And then if you've been to Denver, you would have got a little bit of this, but you probably got it in your market as well.
Hello, America, Mexico, and remote parts of Canada. This is Ron Burgundy reporting for ESPN, or ESPN, as it's known in the biz. My guest today is none other than future Hall of Fame quarterback Peyton Manning. Peyton, can you hear me?
I sure can, Ron, and it's an honor to be talking to you.
Peyton, can you hear me?
Yes, Ron, I can, very clearly. Can you hear me, Ron?
Yes, loud and clear. Can you hear me?
What do you think?
I think yes, you can hear me. I just want to make sure it's you, Peyton. I remember once before the 1978 Holiday Bowl, I thought I was interviewing the great Phil McConkey, and instead
Hilarious. I mean, he was just ubiquitous, selling cars and trucks and on the local news and so forth, just hilarious. But let's go look and see how they did. So you have the third installment of Toy Story. You've got two things here, Box Office Mojo and then Rotten Tomatoes. So, you know, did the audience like the third installment? Yeah, look at the numbers, you know, from Rotten Tomatoes, doing pretty good. How about the domestic sales for Toy Story 3, third installment? You know, almost a half a billion. Look at the global sales. I think I have that down on the, I mean, the total sales, 1 point what? You know, over a billion? Over $1 billion, 1.9 billion. Okay, and then, you know, you come over here, Anchorman 2, it's a second installment, obviously a very popular, but the numbers are a fraction. There's a lot of reasons for that, but the one thing about Toy Story is Andy came of age with an entire cohort. So if you looked at midnight, who was waiting outside for that movie to start on opening night? Yeah, I know, there you go. There we go. Yeah, yeah. And you didn't have to wear a pirate outfit like Pirates of the Caribbean. But, you know, there's folks that really grew up with that story and know those characters so well. And Andy was the same age in Toy Story 1 as those folks going off to college in Toy Story 2. It's kind of the Titanic effect, right? Teenage girls, multiple times going to see Titanic when it came out. It's one of those things that just, you can't believe that it's as successful as it is, but you can look back and say, man, that was something. Anchorman 2 is one of those things that people sometimes age out, or they weren't of age when the first one came out. So 2 is less relevant. Okay, so there's a lot of reasons for that, but for all the promotion, for being the second installment, you know, for being a pretty popular first movie, second time out wasn't quite, you know, as strong a performance. And those things, you know, those go into a lot of the decisions on whether or not you continue to move forward. And fortunately, it's based on performance as opposed to maybe awards won or lost. You think of Lord of the Rings, you know, they didn't win their Academy Awards until the third Lord of the Rings. So if you were measuring yourself not on performance at the box office, right, and more on the awards, or whether this was kind of a breakthrough piece of movie making, you probably maybe not make that third one. And we saw that a little bit with the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And, you know, will we go on and make all the books? Probably not. Of course, poor Lucy will be in an old folks' home by the time we get through, you know, all the books. So what are we going to do to unleash? And these are the last couple slides. What can we take away from this? If I wanted to unleash the strategist in myself, maybe I'm already in that role, or I'm in a creative role, but I really know that I'm contributing. One, I really have to understand what the brand, the business, and communication goals are. I think we heard that earlier today by Pam. You know, that I need to know what the overall business goals are so I can put the brand and communication goals into that. And measurable. I mean, we talked a lot about measurability. And then this idea that I understand my portfolio of products and services inside and out. I really understand, and Apple does such a great job on this, not just how they're made, but what they do and why they matter. What the competitive landscape, who's our direct competition, but more importantly, who's the indirect competition that we're fighting against. More times than not, we're competing for dollars outside of the actual category that we're in. So to make our creative stronger, understanding that, you can actually neutralize a competitor's message without actually doing any kind of competitive claim. And especially if you're in a leadership role, you never even want to mention that competition. But you need to know that. You need to know the trends within the category, within the industry. Also, the customer profiles and insights. We heard this multiple times, but not just, you know, who they are and what, you know, what their attitudes are, and more importantly, what they do, and who satisfies their needs that you're not satisfying now? How are you going to create desire? How do you get out in front with things that are innovative like Apple that people don't even know what an iTunes is or an iPod or how do you do that? How do you get leapfrog ahead and bring them something they should want even though they have no idea what it is? And then this, you're solving a problem for them. So you want to also champion solution and media neutrality, because a lot of times people will come in and say, hey, we need a print ad. We need a new email blast to go out. Hey, can we do a television commercial? Well, you always ask the question, what are you trying to accomplish? Who's the audience? What is the message? And then you say, okay, the best solution for this is maybe an event. All right, maybe it's direct mail. Maybe you step back and go, timing's not right, we don't do anything. So the idea of being solution and media neutral and not just kind of an order taker is really, really important. This idea of knowing creative constraints. And if there's anything that causes tension sometimes within especially an agency, is not working to the constraints of the project. Oh, we did this spread because, we just think we need, to make the product the hero. And yeah, but we have a media budget for a fractional ad, right? Or we brought in, we think we're shooting with Spielberg. He hasn't done anything on. Yeah, well, we don't have that budget. And you can do great work without spending a lot of money. When that Think Different campaign was winning all the awards in outdoor, we were doing an outdoor campaign for D&W Food Centers, which were just in West Michigan. That won an Obie, which is the top outdoor award. And you know what? We had a tiny budget, and there were only about 27 stores. But it ended up in the Obie book on how to create breakthrough outdoor. So you didn't have to have you just had to have a big idea. This idea of ideation and research and testing, strategic planning, brand and business reviews, really infusing yourself within that as a creative to say you are a part of this. You're part of articulating, right, and getting that message out, figuring out what that platform is, what the positioning, what the differentiation is, and how do you articulate that. Funny that I would choke on the word articulate. Articulate that creatively. And so really, you should be an invited person, but a lot of times, no, it's a little bit of a separation. So if you can work in that collaborative environment, it's huge. And again, this is on SlideShare. So then on the other thing, unleashing that creative. I carry a camera around with me everywhere. If there's anything that you can do creatively, even if you're left brain, even if you're a strategist, what is the thing, whether it's music or if it's art, photography, whatever it is, what is that thing that gives me that creative outlet? And I just carry a camera around with me. I shoot all the time, whenever I can. You need to really internalize that businesses are creative. So start thinking about how is our business a creative business? Even if it's trucking, logistics, what are we doing that's creative about it? When we were envisioning this, when we were putting the business plan together, when we were asking for loans, we were hiring people, what was it about us that made us creative? And maybe find a way to internalize that and make sure it comes through. Also, business communications need creativity. The idea that we shouldn't, sometimes when we work and live in a row and column world, we have to make a few charts and graphs. We have to use color. We have to find a way to visually tell the story, even if it's just numbers, and because it shouldn't be boring. When we do a presentation, when we put together a financial plan, anything, well, don't be too creative with financial plans. I learned that from an accountant. And then the brand story, if there's anybody closest to the ethos of a company, if you go into Leo Burnett, on every floor, at every office, all over the world, there's a bowl of apples. And the Apple story is just known that when Leo started his agency, he put a bowl of apples out, and the Chicago Trib said, you're going to be selling apples on the street. It was during the Depression, before this agency takes off. And they are the number one buyers of Washington State apples. It became part of the culture, and it became part of their story. When we won Sony, I worked on the Sony account, they put in a videotape of Leo Burnett's last speech to the company. It was called When to Take My Name Off the Door. And Jerry Delafamina was there, and he said, listen, you hired Delafamina, you got Jerry. I'm there all the way, 24/7 I'm there. You know, and then Jerry said an ad age, and then these guys in suits from Chicago came in, put this videotape in of some dead guy in a black suit, you know, and they gave the business to Burnett because the story was so compelling. When to take my name off the door. It really captured that. So be part of that storytelling, that creation of story, the sharing of story, and then the inherent drama. What is it that we are about? You know, the magic of Disney, the rugged individualism of Marlboro. You know, that idea that there's an inherent drama, is that coming through in the communications? I want to be part owner of that. And then the big idea. And it's not easy. It usually takes some bent noses, downright cursedness, torn up things to get to that big idea. But when you have it, as Leo said, you know, when you reach for the stars, you don't always get one, but you don't come up with a handful of mud either. You know, and that's so true. So really push for the big idea. Don't go for the easy idea. Don't go for the, and just make sure that you're not doing what's safe and what's familiar and what will be sold. You know, but that thing that's really going to move the business. And if you're sitting there, you have to really challenge yourself. Yes, it's got to get done, but within the constraints that we have, it has to be the best that we can do. All of a sudden, I'm doing a New York accent because I did Jerry Della Femina. What can I say? Thanks, Jerry. And then you need to contribute. How do you inform and inspire the creatives? I mean, when you're writing copy, that's what you're doing when you're putting together a creative brief. How do you write it? There's such a big difference between the word build and the word foster. And the account service people would just go nuts. It's just a word. No, it's not. Foster is a totally different concept. You know, so it's like I have this little poetry that I'm writing, and I really want it to connect and resonate with people. And then you want to inspire and inform those creatives so that they have something that they can really work with. And then how do you speak into the creative? You know, don't give them the fixes, you know, but allow them to solve it. But if you know from a business standpoint, a competitive standpoint, or a strategy standpoint, something's not working, you have to be able to figure out how to dialogue. You know, could it do this? You know, and allow them to come up with that solution instead of being heavy-handed and just, hey, risk this out for me. Change this, change this color, move this here. You know, if you ever want to start a war with a creative or really just kind of take all the joy out of their job, it's start doing the job for them. But at the same time, then you have to open yourself up on the strategic side to let your creative speak into what you're doing, what you're writing, challenge you. Really? Could you tell me something more? Could you dig a little deeper? And then sell and defend the creative. Believe in the creative that you decide to take out, and just, you know, you still have to listen to the client, but be able to sell it. Don't just roll over. But also don't take work out that you don't want to be bought. I mean, don't take an idea out that you don't, you know, if the client buys, oh, I can't believe they bought that. Well, you shouldn't have showed it to them. You know, take work out that you believe in and be able to defend it, usually with fact and not emotion or opinion, if best, and help lead them to an undeniable conclusion. This is the way we should go. That's my last. I will grab some water, answer any questions, be here afterwards. I know this is the end of the day for everybody, but then we're all together tonight, right? But any questions? All right. Going once, going twice. Yes. Oh, you were fixing your microphone. You have to ask a question just because you had your hand up.
How was the conference? Did you enjoy yourself?
I had a great time. I had a great time. Thanks. I enjoyed you guys. Thanks.